Hey there. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap podcast, where we talk about navigating the adoption process and beyond. Before we get into the episode, here's a quick word from today's sponsor.
Are you growing your family through adoption and doing your outreach independently? Creating and managing your adoption-specific social media pages shouldn't feel overwhelming.
That's where Our Chosen Child comes in. We're adoption marketing experts who help hopeful parents connect with expectant parents authentically and confidently.
Our social media plan and post program gives you 6 months of ready-to-go posts for Instagram and Facebook. They're easy to personalize, even if you're not tech savvy. It's the easiest way to grow your outreach without spending hours creating content.
Want to take it a step further? Our custom adoption videos bring your story to life, helping expectant parents hear your voice, see your personality, and feel a real connection.
Stop guessing. Start connecting.
Visit ourchosenchild.com and use code ROADMAP for $100 off your social media plan and post program.
Hey, welcome back to part 2 of our episode with birth mother Sydney Curtin. Sydney is also a life coach, speaker, and author of Courageous Considerations, a guide to open adoption. If you missed part 1, go back and listen. Sydney shared her personal adoption story, one marked by coercion, broken promises, and profound loss. It's a really great episode. Now on to part 2.
What lies or assumptions do you think hopeful adoptive parents are being sold by the adoption industry?
I think that there's two major ones, and I don't think that both apply to all adoptive families. I've met wonderful adoptive families that enter into this with the entire intention and level of integrity to maintain their promises. So I want to preface this with that. I think one of the lies that is fed is that if you decide that the relationship that you promise the natural mother with her child is no longer conducive to your family structure or no longer working for your family unit, this is not legally binding. I think that is a major one that is fed to a lot of adoptive families. I know this because it was told to me, which means it's being said both sides. When I entered into this openness agreement, I was in full recognition that I was placing trust and laying down all of my legal weapons that they may or may not honor the promises made to me in this adoption. Mm-hmm. The second major lie that I think is being fed is that when you adopt, you are not getting a child with the same level of trauma or the same wound that you may get by adopting from the foster care system. Here's why I say that. There are still over 115,000 children in our foster care system that need a home. And yet we find that we have over 2 million couples in the United States hopefully waiting to adopt. Well, we're talking about adoptive families that are home study ready, that have had background checks, that are fully certified through the agency as a great match for or an appropriate couple, somebody that should be allowed to raise a child, right? Why then are most of these hopeful adoptive parents not foster parents? There's two reasons. One of them is that the funding from adoption agencies and the foster care system come from two different things. Agencies are independently funded. They're funded from several different causes, but it's not typically state funding. Or if it is state funding, it's on a much smaller scale. Whereas the foster care system is funded by the state primarily and federal funding. So for those two reasons, there is an inherent conflict of interest, and this boils down to money. And this is my biggest issue with the adoption system and the foster care system in our states today, is at what point do we draw the line and say, we're not actually doing what's in the best interest of the child. We're doing what's in the best interest of whoever is funding this, their wallet. And that is where I get really nauseated at the concept of adoption, primarily the talk track. So saying to adoptive families that When you adopt from the foster care system, you're inheriting a child that already has a set of parents that they know, they may have a relationship with, they may have a desire to connect with again, that they may have been through some really traumatic things, and to brace yourself emotionally for supporting the child through that. But when you adopt, because you're adopting an infant, you get to shape this infant's start to life. That is a lie. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Puppies are not separated from their mothers until 8 weeks old. And we are taking a newborn child that grew for 9 months in the womb of the only person that they know. And immediately, in the state of Colorado, anyways, 3 days after birth, separating them permanently from the only thing that they've ever known. And you want to tell me that that is not a wound that's going to have to be healed?
It's lived trauma versus unlived
Exactly.
trauma, but it's still there. So
Absolutely.
is it different? Probably.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. But I think that when you're talking about individuals, I couldn't agree more. When you're talking about individuals that maybe haven't been through the process of fostering and are hoping to adopt, and you're told that you could be adopting a child that has a lot of wounds that need to be healed from versus a child that you get to decide how those wounds play a factor in their identity, inherently that's wrong, because the neuropsychology of how wounds are formed look very similar. And if anything, those neuron connections are firing at a much more rapid pace in newborn infants than they are in the adolescents that we're talking about. And for that reason, we still struggle with the same types of attachment disorders that we see develop in their adolescent ages. It just looks different.
Yeah. If, I often think, why aren't we doing the same type of training for parents, whether they adopt infant
Absolutely.
or foster, and make it easier to do either or?
Amen.
I think certainly there's going to be people who are choosing the infant route because they dream of having a baby, right?
And that's okay.
Going through, yeah.
Absolutely.
And there are also people who are open to older, but it's more difficult to navigate both tracks at the same time. And I think that's where what you're talking about a little bit too, right?
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Okay.
And I think that the third one in the same breath of that too, that I've heard before, and not from all agencies, I might also clarify that this is not something that I've heard universally throughout private adoption or agency adoption. It's just throughout my journey now for the last 6 years, and the speaking that I've done in the book that I've written and the people that have reached out to me, these are the things that I've heard that I wish I could just abolish. If I could just make these things universal, like this is not the talk track for those, I think we would all be set up for a much more solid foundation of these relationships. Yeah. But another thing is that you erase the child's parents, and it's not said in this verbiage, just for the record, but that in a foster care system, if you're adopting a child that's between the ages of 5 and 13 per se, that they have parents that they likely know and have had a relationship with in the past. Whereas if you adopt from infancy, that you are all that they'll ever know. And that's not the case, because we have to have a positive talk track about adoption from the gate. So even if, of course, you are the parents that raised this child as an adoptive couple, no doubt about it. You are the key role model, influential figure. You get to shape their life experiences in a lot of ways. But psychology today says that whereas we used to just announce to these children at a certain age, hey, by the way, you're adopted, now we tell children from the beginning of their life in age-appropriate ways, this is where you came from, this is who you are. And that has improved a lot of psychology around adoption. But trying to set the expectation for adoptive parents that somehow just erases their natural families is not a healthy talk track.
I don't know that. I think that's changed a lot, at least since I started working in this industry 12, 13 years ago. I think more people, I don't know if that was the conversation or not, but I think more families believed that because they weren't getting the amount of education and there weren't as many voices as there are now out there. But I think there's a lot more talk about openness now and the importance.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And you called open adoption compassionate in theory, but cruel in practice. Compassionate in theory, but cruel in practice. What would make it truly compassionate in real life?
If everybody just put their ego aside, and I mean everybody, birth moms, adoptive parents, and the agency, and said, Let's figure out if this is what's right for all of us, is what would make it truly compassionate. And that means vulnerability to say, hey, I'm not protecting my cards. You're not protecting your cards. I spoke on an interview with an agency in Utah. And one of the things that this adoptive mother came back to me with was, it's really hard to, when you've just been hoping for this child, to sit down with expectant mothers and not try to sell yourself or present your best self. So some of these questions that are in your book that are extremely vulnerable, I'm not sure how honest of an answer you will get, was her response. And my response to that is, that's a problem, because I am trusting you not just for this meeting, I'm trusting you for the rest of my child's life to do what's best for my child, and in all due respect, to be the mediator of this relationship. I'm trusting that you will always put the best interest of our child at the forefront of your mind, while maintaining a respectful, communicative relationship with me, so that whatever is in the best interest of the child's well-being doesn't inhibit our relationship. That's where relationships tend to go south, is when adoptive parents feel that they're doing what's in the best interest of the child, but then the behavior turns also onto the birth mother. We know that children go through really hard phases of life, adopted or not, where they hate mom or they hate dad, and they're going through these hard things. And if we can agree that the foundation of this child's identity and their best foot forward in life is a result of our ability to maintain the foundation for this child, then we are in a compassionate situation that's always going to put the well-being of our child first.
I mean, it's reminding me again, if we go back to this concept of comparing it to marriage, right? When you first start dating someone, you are putting your best foot forward. You are not showing them the ugly, because you want them to like you. So I mean, it's no different, right? So it's natural that we do that, for sure. We want you to like us. And I think, you call it a, what did you say? Your ego, letting go of your ego. Sure. And I might call it this shift of power, right? Letting go, dropping your power.
Absolutely.
Right? Fair. And maybe it goes hand in hand, because there's so many different power shifts in adoption too. But so compassionate to you is being fully open and transparent and honest from the get-go of who you are and how you live life and what your intentions are.
I think it's also just that selflessness too. All of that, and this selfless factor of, from my position, and I understand that this isn't where every birth mom comes from, but for me, I desired to raise my child. It was not my desire that led me to adoption. It was what I wanted in her best interest that led me to adoption. So I was already being as selfless as I knew how to be at the time to do what was best for my child. And I wasn't met with that same level of selflessness in return.
Knowing what you know now about adoption and going back to what you really wanted, which was a visit every single month, do you think you were asking too much?
No, I do not. I have relationships with women now that are birth mothers that see their child every week, every other week. I have a friend of mine who I love dearly, and she is just the babysitter for her adoptive parents. And so when they go on a date night or something like that, she's the one that's brought over to watch her son and their other children. I think that it's very similar to if you go through McDonald's and order Italian, you're not asking too much, you're just asking the wrong people. Like you can't go to a fast food restaurant and ask for a glass of red wine and spaghetti, right? Like you can't do that. I was just asking the wrong people. It's not that I was asking too much.
Yeah. And I have to say, I'm just going to put it out there that that's not the norm, right? You don't see that as much that anybody does. However, it has, just like you said, it has nothing to do with your ask and wherever you land in your comfortability. It has to do with your acceptance of that ask and committing to it. If
Absolutely.
you committed to it, now they didn't commit to 12, you compromised to 6, but if that's what you're saying yes to, then that's a promise and that's where the integrity comes. If they knew that you're not comfortable with that, then that's a no,
Absolutely.
And I think there also is the desperation piece that comes into it, right?
Of
I
course.
know this isn't legal. Maybe I can convince her otherwise. We want this baby, so we love her and we want to be a parent so bad. That is not okay
Absolutely.
to put your integrity on the line like that.
And I also think what you said is spot on, because one of the biggest focuses of my book is not so much that open adoption needs to look like what I needed it to look like for my daughter.
Right.
And I know that what I was asking was definitely less common than what is traditional for openness agreements. So I thank you for pointing that out. What it really is that even if your agreements are, say, once a quarter or once every 6 months, or perhaps it's a pen pal visitation or phone calls, things of that nature, I still think that communication styles, conflict resolution strategies, and love languages, both receiving and giving love languages, are really crucial to identify in this type of relationship.
Hmm.
Even if your openness agreement is something that is less frequent than mine now or what I was hoping for, it's really important that just as an individual, even if we're not going to talk on a daily basis, when you get divorced from a person and you don't share a child, that can be it. That's it. Like, we don't have to talk again after this is finalized. When an adoption results in divorce, there's still a child at the center of this.
Mm-hmm.
So even when the relationship deteriorates, if our heart is truly to do what is best for this child, then I need to know about this person. What are their preferred methods of communication? What really like triggers them when it comes to conflict resolution? Are they somebody that needs an email to process first about, hey, here are kind of the things I want to talk about? Or are they the person that gets anxious with that type of communication and they would prefer a phone call? And
Yeah.
knowing all of those types of things about the person that you're entering into this lifelong marriage with for the sake of this child is really crucial, regardless of whatever your openness expectations are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and keeping in mind that everybody's relationship will evolve differently and
Yes,
everybody's expectations from the beginning. And so it's really important to be super clear on these agreements. And I mean, I think it's important to also, like you stated, things change, right?
absolutely.
Should
Be
they
flexible.
have should they have stayed in the country because they made that agreement? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That was an opportunity that came up. Maybe they were expecting it, maybe they weren't. Life does happen. So where is that room for that as well? And those things it needs to be in there somehow. It
I
needs to be
have that in my
discussed.
book. I have these unexpected scenarios. So,
Yeah.
what happens to my child if both of you tragically pass away in a car accident? Who gets custody of my child? Because now the continuation of these promises may go on between me and that person, or maybe that person is unwilling to continue these promises, vice
Mhm.
versa. What happens if I pass away and I have things set in place for my child to inherit, which I personally do? How do I communicate that with somebody in your family so that
Mm.
that can be I mean, there's all of these things that people just don't consider because it's already so much. And like you said,
Mhm.
when you're dating, you have the opportunity typically to go through that for a while, where you can put on a face, and it's only over time that you start to see these true colors. Adoption isn't typically like that. It's much more like speed dating, or
Yeah.
even the TV show Married at First Sight. It's like, hey, like, I need to know all of this now. It's kind of like drinking through a fire hose, but we signed up for this. It's
Now,
very different than dating.
now let me throw this at you because you brought up, and who knows where the truth lies, that the adoptive parents of your child said something that it was too traumatic for your child, for your daughter to talk so much or whatever it was.
Oh, yes.
Is there a point? I remember in my agreement, which also was not legal, I stated that the in back when I adopted, there really wasn't people asking for visits. It just wasn't a
Sure.
thing as it is now. So pictures and letters and open communication until he was 18. But I said, my intention is you will always have access to me. Always.
Sure.
I will never cut you off. I will never speak ill will of you. If the child, as they get older.
I apologize. My phone gave me a notification. I'm so sorry. I'm just making sure it doesn't do that anymore. Can we pause for 2 seconds so I can clear this?
Uh-huh.
It's disrupting my recording and I don't want it to. What the heck? I didn't have any problems with this yesterday.
No, it's okay.
Did it I hope it didn't disrupt what you were saying.
No. We're good.
Okay, let me just reset this up and we should be okay.
Okay.
Let's see here.
This is so good, this conversation. I love it.
I'm loving it too. I'm glad that it's good flow. Okay, are we all right now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that.
So you had said something about that the adoptive parents had said something was too traumatic for your child. So is there a point where you think that the child can verbalize whether or not they want to talk to their birth mom? So for instance, I'll give you a little personal scenario. So when I adopted almost 14 years ago, I'm like very close to my son's 14th birthday, which is weird. There wasn't really, visits weren't really a thing. It was mostly just letters, pictures, all of that. My promise to his birth mom was open communication, that she would always have access to me. I would never deny her access to me. I would always tell her where I'd be. I would, we welcome the opportunity to talk and share pictures and everything openly. However, if the child at any point states that they are not comfortable with it, or they're, working through some things and it doesn't feel good to them, and they are asking not to, that I would have to respect them at that moment in time.
I love that. No, I think that it's really crucial. I mean, even reflecting on my own adoption, I was adopted in different circumstances. It was not from infancy. And so I say this with respect to the different level of impact that has on a child. However, there were stages while my mom was still alive that I needed distance from my mom. And there were stages of my life that I needed distance from my dad, and stages of my life that I later on needed distance from my stepmom. So if they had come to me and said, look, this is really hard on her and we're not really sure how to address it right now, but we would like to maintain open communication with you about where we're at, that would have been a very different conversation than them just saying, hey, we can't do this right now.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's about that intentionality from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
All right. Since you brought up you were adopted, you want to tell us just a broad overview of your story or when you were adopted?
I do. Let me stop my dog from barking. I'm so sorry. The
okay,
fire.
I don't even hear him.
Oh, I'm glad. They were letting us know that the fire's contained, so that's good.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. Okay. So I had a history of adoption in my family. My dad's dad had left when he was 7, and actually a judge had pulled his biological father to the side and said that if he cared about what was best for my dad, that he would leave. My biological mom's dad had passed away when she was 2, and she went on to later be adopted by her stepdad. And so when my mom passed away from her drug addiction, it was natural that once my dad later remarried, adoption almost was expected because of our family history. So I was adopted by, or I should say I was extended the offer of being adopted by my stepmom when I was, I want to say 14 or 15. I don't remember the exact age. At that age, it was kind of complicated because I already had a relationship with my stepmom, or I'm sorry, my biological mom. I knew who she was. And at that adolescent phase of being a teenager, I didn't really feel like I needed a replacement to the mother role that I had known my whole life. But my two younger brothers were being adopted by her, and I didn't want anyone to take it as rejection or that I didn't appreciate the role that she wanted to be able to offer me. And so I did end up allowing her to adopt me. And in hindsight, if I hadn't, then I probably would have later asked her to. She's been a godsend in our life, and she's a huge blessing to my dad. And I respect her tremendously for taking on the role that she did after everything our family had been through.
So there was a lot of kinship adoption in your family.
Yes.
That's beautiful. All right. Well, I wanted you to explain, since we didn't really touch on that, and we're talking about so many other things. How do you coach women to reclaim their voice after trauma that tells them they're not enough?
So all of the coaching that I do primarily comes from a faith perspective. And I typically preface that in intro meetings because that type of coaching is not what everyone's looking for or doesn't fit what everyone needs in their life at the time. For me, though, it was that I needed something that was bigger than myself to continue on. And I needed direction on how to turn all of the events that I had been through in my life into fuel or into purpose, rather than to allow that to be something that hindered me. What everyone in my life had done up until that point was say, well, you know, she's got a lot of stuff that she's going through, or a lot of stuff she's going to have to deal with before she can be successful, or before she can achieve this or that. And I was really tired of those self-imposed limitations being placed on me because of the lies that I was feeding myself, because of the input that I was getting from the closest people around me. The most impactful thing that I did was really decide that I was going to change my circle of influence. And it meant cutting off relationships that I loved dearly, people that I loved and adored and had valued their input so heavily in my life up until this point. And it meant creating boundaries that if it didn't align with what God's word said about who I was, then it doesn't pass my fact check test, and it's therefore invalid, and it has no bearing in the way that I continue. So I think that I coach women in different stages. Not all of them are just birth moms. I mean, I've coached an adoptive mom before that was like, I need help because I feel so territorial over this little baby. And I know that I don't have a place to do that, but I don't know how to get through this. So I've coached adoptees, birth moms, adoptive moms. I've coached women that haven't been through an adoption, but perhaps have left a narcissistic relationship. And it's been such a beautiful thing because it's increased my ability to empathize and relate and help those women turn that into a really powerful message as opposed to allow it to just define them or put a cap on what they're capable of.
Changing your circle of influence is so powerful. What do they say? You're the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with the most, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's great advice for anybody who's not where they want to be, right? And not always easy to do. Those boundaries need to be in place. Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah, it was uncomfortable, but like that place of being uncomfortable is where you grow. You don't grow in your comfort zone.
Yeah. So now you see your daughter, or you see her mostly just on the screen now because she's still in France, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And a few times a year. Even though it's not in person, what do those visits mean to you? And what do they cost you?
I have had to relinquish my idea of control of my daughter. And one of the hardest but most effective things that I've had to practice in this adoption journey is the concept of radical acceptance. So it's not just that I accept this even though I don't like it. It is just radical. I cannot change anything. I trusted my intuition. I trusted the faith-led decisions that I made. And I trusted, whether it was valid or not, the people in my life that were feeding me information at that time. But she belongs to God before she belongs to me. And I told my daughter's adoptive mom in the hospital when I had made the decision for adoption, I pulled her into the room and I said, And now she belongs to you before she belongs to me. And I just need you to make me one promise, and that you'll never take her from me. And she looked me in the eyes and said it would be ungodly to do so. And I cannot control their actions. I have to trust that even if I don't agree with it, that they are being led in their faith and their beliefs and their love for my daughter to do what they truly believe is best for her. I just wish that they had a better foundation of a relationship with me, because this wouldn't be such a toxic, power tripped relationship if they had approached me with exactly what you said. Hey, she needs a break right now. You can always get a hold of me. That would have been so different. I would have been so much more willing to be flexible with those stipulations. I still would have encouraged conversation based on the degree that I have in psychology. I have a master's in psychology, and I would have challenged some of those things, but in a healthy way. I mean, relationships should challenge you about what you believe. If somebody truly believes, that may not be what's best for you.
Yeah. Yeah. How is your daughter doing?
She's having a hard time. And seeing her cry on her birthday because she doesn't understand why she can't talk to me, it breaks my heart. And then less than 24 hours later, having her adoptive mom violate what we have told each other, and finding her on my social media, watching some of the videos that I've posted, felt like not only a violation of trust, but a violation of respect, considering trust hasn't been there for a while now. She's having a hard time. And I pray that they really reflect on the actions that they have acted on, the emotions that they've acted on, because ultimately it's not going to come back and bite me. I've been consistent in this entire relationship, and I don't say that in an egotistical way. I have come hands up every time, like, what are we doing? And it's always been from a position of respect and love for them. They have been the ones that have deteriorated our relationship. I can't control that. All I can be accountable for is my actions and my love for my daughter. And it's platforms like this and my book and the public speaking that I do and the agencies that I travel to speak with hopeful adoptive parents that I'm going to have an impact on in the short term until she is able to make a decision for herself what this relationship will look like.
What would you say to a birth mom considering placement right now, standing in the same vulnerable place that you once were?
You are courageous. And anyone considering adoption is somebody that I automatically have respect for, especially with abortion being as accessible as it is in our nation. I have a tremendous amount of appreciation and a high level of respect for women who can recognize the intrinsic value of the life that they're carrying enough to reflect on if they are what's best for their child in their current circumstances or situation. I would also encourage you to pray about what your motivating factors are that are leading you to adoption, and to buy my book. Because if you go through adoption, you need to ask these questions. Even if not all of them pertain, you won't know what to ask. And hindsight is 2020. And it was the most expensive consequence I've ever paid in my life.
Speaking of your book, Courageous Considerations,
yes.
It's a workbook, right, that you wrote as a resource for hopeful parents, adoptive parents, and natural parents, birth moms who are considering adoption, anybody in that realm within the
yes.
with thoughts of adoption,
Yes.
to really pause and revisit their foundation, ask some tough questions, and really understand what they are, the decisions that they are making.
Absolutely.
Tell us how people can get it.
So you can get it on Amazon. It's actually just in the final stages of being published now.
Ooh, congrats.
So originally, thank you. It was one book is what had happened. So the reason it was supposed to be done last month, but I had broken the book down into reflective questions and journaling prompts. And I then later found that people needed more space to really reflect on those journaling prompts and have space for any additional questions that may come to mind. Of course, I didn't think of all of the questions that may pertain to any situation with how intricate adoption is. So I ended up breaking down the books into 2 books. So one of them is the book with the reflective questions and why those questions became relevant to me too little too late. And the workbook that comes with it is a series of reflective journaling questions with coloring pages and blank space to write additional thoughts.
Awesome. And we will link that once we have a link to.
You'll be the first to have it.
Get that in the hands of people. And by the time this episode comes out, it will have been out. So we will make sure that that is all linked below in the show notes.
Thank you.
Sydney, thank you so much for this conversation. I think it's really important. And I think, adoptive parents, hopeful adoptive parents, if you're an adoptive parent who has not kept your word, it's not too late. Go and have some tough conversations. If you're uncomfortable, that's okay. Think, put yourself in the shoes of your child. Put yourself in the shoes of a birth mom. Have an open heart and have those tough conversations. And if you're just walking into adoption, just remember to keep your integrity and only promise what you intend to keep. Your word, keep your word. Any concluding thoughts before I wrap it up with some quick fire questions?
Defer your circle of influence to people who do not all know each other and that know you from different environments so that you don't get similar advice that is influenced based on the circle of influence that they may be a part of. It was really valuable to me to make sure that the people that are my innermost circle don't even have a relationship with each other, because when I ask them questions, I get very valuable insight that's not influenced by other people's perspectives in my life.
Oh, I love that. What a great golden nugget. All right, here goes my rapid fire. Ready?
Ready.
The first one's a shout out. Give a shout out to one person or organization that's influenced your adoption journey or the work you're doing in adoption.
Teresa Moorcroft, you've been a godsend to me. Teresa Moorcroft is the founder of Unplanned Good. She's an adoptive mom that has a heart for legal reformation that supports laws that are in benefit to adoptees and natural families to neutralize the legal authority in the adoption system.
What's one piece of advice you would like to share with adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive parents?
You do not have to sell yourself to somebody who is doing what's in the best interest of their child. Come in honest and vulnerable, and those women will meet you with that same level of vulnerability. Know that if it is meant to be, it will be.
What's one thing you wish every adoptive parent knew before they brought their child home?
You didn't take home a blank canvas. There is already a part of that picture that's been painted. And your job is to make that picture something beautiful, as opposed to try to white out the existing influence that child already has based on that child's start to life.
Describe adoption in 3 words.
Sacrifice, selflessness, love.
Adoption is not just a destination. It's a journey filled with love, resilience, and growth. Wherever you are on this roadmap, trust in your path, stay open to learning, and always lead with your heart. You already have everything you need to create a beautiful story for your family, and when the road takes unexpected detours, I'm here to help you navigate every turn along the adoption roadmap. Thank you so much, Sydney. I appreciate you sharing your story so vulnerably and leaving us with so many golden nuggets.
It's a pleasure. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.